Hello, I'm Ollie, and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, none of those. Today, trash. I'm doing a review of Hollywood Wives by Jackie Collins. So, as you'll hopefully be aware, there is the reading event to end all reading events coming in August. That is GarbAugust, a month devoted to reading trashy books. And there are 10 Thursdays between now and August. So I thought I would start doing a countdown to GarbAugust. So each week I'm going to review on a Thursday a trashy book. And I'm going to do this alongside my existing Thursday review slot. So I'm going to put these trash reviews up in the morning, I think, or morning UK time anyway. And my regular review slot will continue to be in the afternoon. So you get 2 reviews from me every Thursday. How lucky are you? And it's up to you whether you want to watch both or just one or neither. Anything goes really. So Jackie Collins's Hollywood Wives felt like an appropriate book to start with, as it is, one of those books that often appears in top 10 lists of trashy books. It is a wonderfully trashy book. I don't, sadly, have a paperback copy of it, but I do have this copy of The Stud by Jackie Collins, which I've got for GarbAugust. And there's a photo of her on the back looking just incredibly glamorous. And I think, any woman who has an author photo like that and is writing a book about Hollywood, it's going to be the good stuff, don't you? So I will flash up some photos of Jackie Collins while I talk. So she is, as you probably know, the younger sister of the actress Joan Collins. Jackie did try to become an actress as well, but failed. So she did star in appear in a few movies and in some TV stuff, but eventually gave that up and decided to take up writing instead. I think her first published book was The World is Full of Married Men. But Hollywood Wives really it wasn't really her breakthrough book because she'd definitely been successful before then. But it was her first really, really big book. And it was adapted into a TV miniseries, which was very successful as well. And I think perhaps not coincidentally, Hollywood Wives came out around the same kind of time that Joan Collins, her sister, was achieving, real international fame for the first time because she was appearing in the US soap Dynasty. So Joan had been acting for years and is in, lots of British films and things like that prior to Dynasty, and American films too. But Dynasty, really made her a household name with her portrayal of the wicked Alexis. So I think there's probably a bit of an interplay between their two careers there, and I do wonder if they each helped each other a little bit through maybe an unintentional act of synchronicity, that their two careers both really took off at the same time. So let's talk about Hollywood Wives. So as the name would suggest, it's a book about women in Hollywood. Not all of them, it must be said, wives, but there are, many of them are wives, and it kind of centres around the production of a film, or the attempts to produce a film, called Street People. So you get the wife of the male star of that film. There's an ageing kind of sex kitten character who wants to be in the film in a kind of more serious role. There's the woman who's written the screenplay for the film. So there's all these different female characters all kind of interacting with each other and with various men, perhaps most importantly with various men. But it revolves around this film. But, this is a big but, there's also this completely random and very entertaining kind of serial killer story going on throughout the book as well. So it starts with a really brutal and bloody attack, which reads like something from a slasher film, and the perpetrator of that attack ends up in Hollywood. And you kind of track him through the plot as well. So there's an awful lot going on in this book. It certainly doesn't lack in incident. and it paints it paints exactly the sort of picture of Hollywood as you would imagine a book like this would paint. So everyone's kind of backstabbing and really bitchy and purely out for themselves. There's a ton of sex in this book, and it's not so much the volume of sex that hits you in the face. It's the variety. I don't think there's any perversion that is not covered in this book. And there's even, there's a very bizarre comic sequence where two characters who are making love get stuck together and have to go to the hospital. So it's really quite something in terms of the range of sexual activity that is covered within its pages. And to be honest, that's really the point of the book. So it is a book about sex, and it is a book whose appeal is sex. And I certainly remember, it came out in the early 80s when I was, I think I was 10 when it came out. But it was a book I was certainly aware of in my teenage years as being a book that, people referred to as being a bit of a naughty book. And I'm sure that there are many people of a, similar age to me who read it as kind of the first book that they read that they hid from their parents. It definitely had a reputation, and it lives up to that reputation. It's absolutely filthy. It's not necessarily that explicit, but as I say, it's just the sheer range of activity that is covered in it is quite breathtaking. And it's all wrapped up in this kind of wonderfully melodramatic soap opera with relationships between children and parents, and between husbands and wives, and between people who are working together on the film, all this kind of mix of stuff going on, and then this bizarre serial killer plot thrown into it as well. And then there's also some really strange attempts at comedy, and I would say they're attempts because they don't really work. So, for example, there's a detective character in it who's called Little Shits, for no apparent reason. So that was quite entertaining. What was there was another bit I made a note of. There's another character, and I can't remember who he is, but this English character who's got like the broadest, most ridiculous Cockney accent ever, is like full on Dick Van Dyke level Cockney, which is painstakingly spelled out phonetically in the book, and it's just very, very bizarre. But I think, as I was saying at the start about the relationship between Joan and Jackie Collins, I think Jackie Collins, she was living in Hollywood at the time. She definitely capitalises on her connection to the film industry, and whether or not the stuff she's writing about here is really representative of what goes on in Hollywood, I don't know, but you can imagine that maybe at least some of these things are based on things she had at least heard about happening. There's also, as you'd expect from a Hollywood story, a ton of kind of drug abuse and things like that in it, and alcoholism, and there's a nice kind of rags to riches story going through it as well about this one young actor. So there's everything you could want in a trashy beach read kind of a book, and I absolutely loved it when I read it, I have to say. And I'm very interested to read more Jackie Collins and see if everything else she wrote is as wonderfully trashy as this. So yes, that's my first Countdown to GarbAugust review. I'm sure there are a few people out there who've read Hollywood Wives. I mean, it was a huge book when it came out, so millions and millions of copies, and it's a big book as well. So I think it's about 700 pages long, and most of that is kind of random bits of plot that link different sex scenes together. So it's definitely trash. It's definitely entertaining, and I think an important work culturally, just because of its it almost set the tone for 80s trash in some ways. I think it was enormously influential because of its success. So yes, let me know if you've read Hollywood Wives. Let me know what you thought of it, or if you've read the other Jackie Collins. But yeah, that's my first Road to GarbAugust, or Countdown to GarbAugust review. I just wanted to give people a flavour of a few trashy books that are out there that they may want to consider for GarbAugust. So as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I will speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.